So I'm going to read Naomi's bio, which is an amazing feat in itself, and then I'll allow her to talk a little bit more about herself personally, but just listen to some of the things that she's done in the nation, and not even saying what she's done in Southern Arizona. So, Naomi Karp is the Director of Early Childhood Professional Development at the United Way of Tucson in Southern Arizona. She served in the U.S. Department of Education in Washington, D.C. for 20 years. Prior to federal service, Naomi taught children with learning and behavior disorders for both Tucson and in Fairfax County, Virginia. Naomi is the past president of the Southern Arizona Association for the Education of Young Children, and served on the governing board for the national AUIC also. She chaired the research initiative that resulted in the creation of the NAYC Office of Applied Research. She has presented at major national and international conferences. In addition, Naomi has authored or co-authored several book chapters, professional journal articles, and technical reports, position papers, and research reports for families, educators, the U.S. Security of Education, and the Congressional Committee. In 2010, Naomi received an honorary doctorate of human letter for the University of Arizona. She was, in 2009, the recipient of the Arizona Department of Education's Early Childhood Education Leadership Award. In May of 2005, Naomi received the University of Arizona's Alumni Achievement Award. Naomi is the past chairperson for Pima Community College Desert Vista Campus Early Childhood Education Advisor Committee. Naomi is a current chair of the University of Arizona College of Education Advisory Board. And the only education award that she has not received in the Tucson community is the Southern Arizona Board Award. The recipient of this award is recognized for her devotion to public service. You are currently a leader in these efforts in our community in developing a network of professional development in early childhood education. Naomi, your work in Tucson is beyond measure, and your deep care is appreciated by all. You have been a source of knowledge to the board, as well as to the Great Expectations Professional Development Grant, and you've helped us grow in our advocacy work and professionalism. Thank you.
God, I'm exhausted just listening to that. No wonder I have so much gray hair. I want to congratulate all of the award recipients. And Brian, I think I'm in love with you. I want to thank the SASE board for this very moving honor. It's particularly meaningful for me to be honored by leaders in this community in which I was born and raised and which I deeply love. Before I begin, today is especially meaningful to accept this award because right now in the dreaded city of Tempe, my good friend Eddie Basha is having his memorial service. Eddie has left a huge hole in the advocacy and education world, and all of us need to chip in from here on out to fill that hole. So, thank you, Eddie. Josue Cruz is a past president of NAEYC. And he always says he's been successful because he's been able to drink from the wells that others have dug. He warms himself by fires that others have lit. And he achieves his high hopes because he stands on others' shoulders. Well, I'm in Josue's camp also. My helpers are my husband, Gene, who supports me in incredible ways and only grinds his teeth a little tiny bit every once in a while. My sister Sarah, who has been a great cheerleader for me, and my dear friend and super boss, Lavon DeVille at United Way, who has been a wonderful partner and wonderful support system in our professional development work and in many other ways. And I want to recognize Tony Penn and his wife Linda. Tony's the president of United Way. He came to Tucson in the middle of a wrenching and severe economic downturn. He has been able to turn United Way around so that we're now one of the top 25 United Ways in America. And I also want to thank my very dear friends and colleagues at United Way who came out here today. These folks are really the unsung heroes and sheroes of the community who make it possible for United Way to serve 1 in 10 people in our community. Now I want to tell you something about me and what I learned as a child, as a teacher, and in my career in the federal government, and how that applies to our work today in professional development. Lesson 1 was to be an advocate. As a child, I was always truly worried about my friends and classmates who didn't have the same kind of toys that we had, or who didn't have a nice house like ours, or were not reading as well as I was. And the list goes on and on. I was, like my mother, I worried a lot. I still do. I always wanted to know what could be done to help these children. I thought about it a lot. I guess I was a born advocate, and I wanted all kids to have the kind of childhood that I had. I became a teacher of children with severe social emotional issues. I took chances in the Tucson Unified School bureaucracy, always advocating on behalf of the children in my classes. My very first principal, who will remain nameless, but does have a school named after her, spent a lot of time warning me that the children I taught could not do things with the other children in the school. Each conversation deepened my resolve to have more equality for my students. We finally had a major victory when by we I mean the kids in my class and I. We were told by the principal that we could actually eat lunch in the cafeteria with the rest of the school. This small thing was a real esteem-building change for the children. Lesson 2 was to be a risk taker without being reckless. When we moved to Washington, D.C., I taught special ed in Fairfax County for 2 years, and then the prospect loomed that I would have the same little boy, Simon, for the 3rd year in a row, and I said, I'm out of here. I had limits too. So I moved to the Department of Education, where it was Simon on steroids. But I spent 20 years funding large research projects on behalf of children and families. Some of the research studied how children with disabilities could be treated with equity and respect and attend inclusive schools. I always pushed my superiors, I'm not going to call them that. I always pushed my supervisors for more studies and fairer policies related to young disadvantaged children. I kept asking for new areas of investments to study the quality of child care and the relationship between and among child care, public school, pre-Ks, and kindergarten. And most important, how early childhood teachers were being educated. By the time I left the department in 2003, much of the framework for the current Early Learning Challenge grants was built. I would take risks and fund projects that my supervisors frequently said were worthless. So I would spend hours writing justifications for funding them, and I typically won. An example of one risk-taking effort was when I funded the forward-thinking work of Heidi Alls, who was studying very low birth weight babies in neo-intensive care nurseries. And her research made huge changes nationally in neonatal intensive care units across the country. She went on to receive the Brain Researcher of the Decade Award based on that work. Needless to say, I was typically viewed warily by others in the department who did not like ideas to be too different from what existed. Lesson 3 was the need to build partnerships. In almost any field, especially today, there's too much work to do for any one person or agency to do it alone. I never had a big budget that allowed me to get much done by myself anyway. I learned to be ego-free and willing to listen to others more than I ever thought I would have the patience to do. I learned that I had to compromise for progress, but not to compromise my values. Over 20 years, almost 3/4 of the work I did was done with partners across the federal government, with nonprofit agencies, and with universities across the country. Some of the research centers funded by those partnerships in the 1980s still are existing today. Lesson 4, take your work, but not yourself, seriously. I learned very early that people in the government and in research have important work to do. However, people doing that work should not place themselves on pedestals. There usually are many people who could do the same work. It's important to keep your ego small and your goals and ideas big. Now that we're back in Tucson, thanks to Levon, United Way, and First Things First, I've been able to try to put some of these lessons into practice through the incredible early childhood professional development project that we have. I would like all of you who have been a member of a community of practice or are currently a member of a community of practice that is part of Great Expectations for Teachers, Children, and Families to please stand up. Renee, there are a lot of you. This is an incredible journey that we're on, and every day is an experiment, and every day is a learning experience for me, and I am so privileged to be part of this work. Through this grant, we're able to offer flexible, free early childhood education opportunities for center-based, school-based, and family home-based educators. We are truly building a new system of professional development. We're enabling teachers to be advocates for higher quality of learning environments. We're encouraging people who have been out of school for a while to be risk takers and go back to school while working full-time, raising families, and trying to get some sleep. We're forging partnerships, collaborations, and friendships between and among our communities of practice, our partner agencies, and with state agencies. We are building a culture of education in Tucson's early childhood community, a culture in which higher education is an expectation and not the exception. Jessica Bryson, you are truly a saint for having a council in the Central Council, the Central Regional Partnership Council of First Things First, to have developed this funding strategy, and the way you manage it and support us is admirable. I was a project officer a long time. I know the boundaries, the pluses and minuses, and you are superb. Thank you. Again, I want to thank the board. Again, I want to thank the board for this award. I shall always try to live up to the confidence and faith that you have placed in me. I also want to thank those of you who work on the Southern Arizona AEYC board. Your support of the Arizona AEYC and the National Association for the Education of Young Children is excellent. I've served on the NAEYC board. It's a piece of cake compared to working on the local and state levels. There would be no NAEYC without you worker bees at the local level. I truly don't know how you do what you do while working full-time, taking care of families, going to school, and doing everything else that you do. And last, but most important, I want to say something to those of you who work with Tucson's youngest children every day. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, because you are the firewall between children and failure. You are the keys to success in kindergarten and beyond. In September, a new law goes into effect, Move On When Reading. Children will take a test at the end of 3rd grade. Those who do not read at grade level will stay in third grade until they can read at grade level, or drop out, or do whatever. Does anybody in this room think that any child wakes up in the morning and says, boy, I don't want to be able to read? Of course not. It's not the children's fault that they're going to be in this third grade jail. Thus, I believe that it should be a top priority for every early childhood educator in this town to know how to give young children the opportunities and experiences that will build the foundations to help them become readers, strong readers by third grade. Please take classes about language and literacy. Participate in Great Expectations learning opportunities, and find out about Read On Tucson, which is sponsored by United Way. We cannot let this generation of children fail. If we fail the children, we all fail. Thank you very much.